Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Patchogue-Medford Library's program Care and Connections. We are here with Eileen Palmer today, and she has a great craft and activities set for us surrounding Faith Ringgold and her memory quilts. So I want to thank her for her time and hand it over to her. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for joining me at Care and Connections. And today, as Crystal said, we're going to be looking at some of Faith Ringgold's memory quilts and some of her art. And then we have a craft where we're going to have a little fun with textiles, cut them up and make our own quilt type thing. So thank you again for joining us. This is Faith Ringgold. She was born October 8th, 1930, which makes her 91 years old, 92. Somebody could do the math, but she's still with us and she's still making art. She was born in Harlem, New York, and she's a painter, mixed media sculptor, performance artist, writer, teacher, and a lecturer. She's most well known for her story quilts and children's books, which include Tar Beach. Miss Ringgold's active in many social movements, including African American identity, feminism, and gender equality. Faith was born Faith Jones in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. Her mother was a fashion designer who taught Faith to sew and work with fabrics at an early age. In 1950, Faith pursued an art education degree in City College of New York. She received her bachelor's degree and taught in New York City school system for many years. She received her master's degree in 1959, and in 1973, she stopped teaching and devoted herself to working full-time as an artist. These paintings are from her American People series. They were done in 1966. During the 70s, Ringgold was involved in the women's movement, and her work during this time reflected her dedication to promoting presentation of women in the art world. You can see here she did a number of soft quilted dolls, and they represent women from all different areas of the world. And also there's a Danny mask from Africa as well. One of my personal favorites is her wall murals that the MTA, the subway, the Metropolitan Transit Authority commissioned her to do some mosaic murals at the 125th Street station. They are called Flying Home Harlem Heroes and Heroines, and they depict many different famous Black Americans, and they're flying through the sky over her Harlem neighborhood where she grew up. Here's another photograph of the wall murals in the subway system. During the late 60s and 70s, Faith Ringgold played a role in organizing protests against museums that had neglected the work of women and people of color. She's probably most famous for her story quilts and their traditional American craft associated with women's work and have their roots in African culture as well. This quilt here is called Who's Afraid of Aunt Jemima? And it depicts a powerful businesswoman and her friends. This quilt is called Street Story Quilt, and it was done in 1985. It's in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She uses the main canvas and parts of smaller fabric and puts it all together and uses a Sharpie to draw little words. If you can get a close-up of it, you can see all the little stories in each of the blocks. This quilt is called Sunflower Quilting Bee at Arles, and it was made in 1996. It's in the collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Here it depicts powerful African-American women from history, and they're shown in a field of sunflowers where Vincent van Gogh liked to paint. They're working together to create a quilt art story, and they represent the tradition of African-American quilt making as a collective effort passed down through the generations through the women in her family. And if you look in the corner, you'll see a rendering of Vincent van Gogh, and he's offering the ladies sunflowers as a show respect to them. This quilt is from Tar Beach. It's called Tar Beach 2, and it's in the Philadelphia Museum. Tar Beach was the first quilt that Ringgold did in her lighthearted series that was about the book that she wrote. The book is about a spirited heroine called Cassie Louise Lightfoot, who goes up on the roof with her family on hot summer evenings, and she dreams that she can fly all through the sky and enjoy the George Washington Bridge. She said, "I'm free to go wherever I want for the rest of my life." She really enjoyed being up on that roof. Here's another one of the quilts in the series. You see her family sitting around a table, and she and her little brother are laying on a blanket looking up at the stars. Here's Faith Ringgold, and she's reading a small passage from the book Tar Beach.
Stars fell down around me and lifted me up above the George Washington Bridge. I could see our tiny rooftop with Mommy and Daddy and Mr. and Mrs. Honey, our next door neighbors, still playing cards as if nothing was going on. And BB, my baby brother, lying real still on the mattress, just like I told him to, his eyes like huge floodlights tracking me through the sky. Sleeping on Tar Beach was magical. Lying on the roof in the night with the stars and skyscraper buildings all around me made me feel rich, like I owned all that I could see. The bridge was my most prized possession.
So now that we've been inspired by Faith Ringgold, it's time to make our own quilt with the kit that we received from the library. So let's make a quilt. Okay, let's see what we got in our kit. Is everybody ready? You got your scissors? Ooh, I see North Fork sweet potato chips. They're our treat for afterwards. We've got a glue stick, some fabric pieces, a board that we're going to use to glue the fabric pieces onto, and chopsticks we're going to use to hang up our quilt. Okay, this is a quilt that I did earlier, and if you could see it, it had little butterflies and flowers, so I just made kind of a garden theme in this one. Okay. What we should start with is making the loops that we're going to hang up the fabric with, the quilt with. So I'm going to cut 2 strips, pretty much the same size. The fabric pieces I have all very pretty floral patterns on them. So I think I'm inspired to do a garden themed quilt. Okay. So if you have 2 strips, you want to put them onto the top, maybe with a little packing tape on the back and the front, or with the stapler. So I'm going to cheat and use a stapler here. Stapling the front and the back just to be safe. And I'll take the other piece and do the same thing. So basically what I'm doing is putting one end on one side, the other end on the front, and stapling it or using tape and taping it so it's a loop. How you guys doing? Got your loops on? I see that you're using the sticky tape, the school glue stick. That probably will rip out when you go to hang it, but for now it's fine. Just as a heads up. Okay, let's look at the fabrics that we got. Everybody's got different, so let's see. I have this pretty teal color, and I'm gonna cut. We could do anything we really want, but I'm going to make a border on mine. So I'm gonna cut some strips that are pretty much the same way and paste them all around the border. So just liberally put on the glue from the glue stick. A little left over here, so I'm just going to cut it off. And if you like, you can let things hang off the edges, whatever you think looks good. My grandmother was a seamstress. She never made any quilts, but she had tons and tons of fabric around the house. And when I was young, I remember going to the fabric store with her, and there was a candy store right next to the fabric store. And it was my favorite thing to do when I visited my grandmother. We called her Nana. So working with fabric and textiles is something that really makes me happy. I cut strips in one of the colors and it only did 3 sides. So I just picked another one and I'm gonna make the side with the other color. Let's see what I have here. I have a really pretty one. It's got like these big flower patterns on it. And I'm gonna cut them out, and I'm not even gonna be exact. They're kind of like circles, but with little lacy edges. I'm just gonna go right around and not be exact. You can do what you like. This is not an exact science. It's just fun. Right, guys?
No.
You know, I find easiest if you use these glue stick on the board, because it can be a little bit tough to put it on the fabric, but you could try both ways and see what works best for you. Okay, this is the last circle. I like this. This is pretty. Okay. So I have some of this gray, and it also has some pretty flowers in it. I'm just going to cut it into squares and put it in little patches, like a patchwork quilt. So if you want, you could actually cut strips and then cut the strips into little squares. Put them on in any kind of pattern that you would like. And I'm gonna give myself a little pile of squares. So cutting some more strips. Many of the quilts were not done by just one person. They were done by a group generally of ladies who would get together and gossip and just have a good old time sewing different patterns of cloth together to make quilts. Oh, this has a cool little dragonfly. I love dragonflies. We're gonna cut him out. Go through a lot of the glue, so you just twist it up when it gets real flat. Oh, you know, if you go into your kit, you'll see there's an artist card, and it's got a nice picture of Faith Ringgold on the front, and on the back, 2 of her quilts, a little information about her. And in the very corner, it's got a QR code. So if you have an iPhone, you can put it on camera and go over to the QR code. Just, you don't have to take a picture of it, just go right over to it. And then on the top, you'll see a little website, click on that. And I have some nice jazz music to play while we're working. The music was from artists that grew up in her neighborhood. Harlem was a real seat of jazz back in the 50s. So you can listen to a little music, and you can do that yourself as well.
It's so much better.
Isn't that nice with the music? Does anybody have a Sharpie by any chance? Excuse me. I'm going to write something on one of the pieces of fabric, just like Faith Ringgold did in her story quilts. She wrote a lot of things. I'm just writing one word. If you have a Sharpie available and a light piece of fabric, you can do this too. Whatever word or words that you like. Because mine is a flower theme, I wrote bloom. If you wanted to get fancy, you could actually weave the pieces, but right now, I'm not feeling too fancy. Okay. You can continue to work on that. This is my little quilt. Put the, and hang it up with the, like real quilts on the wall. You can hang it up with the dowel or chalk stick. And you can remind you of Faith Ringgold. Thank you.